Sir Robert Stout. The clever Shetland boy who rose to the very top in New Zealand but never forgot his roots and helped transplant hundreds of fellow Shetlanders to his adopted country.
Robert Stout is a giant figure in New Zealand's legal and political history, but his contribution to our story belongs to his early years in Otago rather than the later ones in Wellington. He was born here in Lerwick, Shetland, in a 7-room stone cottage that had been built by his grandfather in Stout's Court, where 4 other branches of his extended family also lived. He was the eldest son of Thomas and Margaret Stout. His father was a successful merchant and landowner who made sure his son went to the best school on the island. First the Lerwick Parish School and then the Shetland Grammar School. In later life, Stout insisted that the very best education he got was at home and the lively discussions he had with his father and uncles about a whole manner of literary and theological issues, or from the magazines and newspapers that came to the house, or the lectures that he attended on the long winter nights at the Shetland Literary Institute.
At 13, he became a pupil teacher at the Lerwick School and passed the examinations to qualify as a full teacher by 16.
Lerwick is just a small town, and Shetland is often described as Scotland's Ultima Thule, as far north as you can go, and a cold and barren landscape. Though he remained proud of his Shetland roots throughout his long life, Stout left the island in 1863 when he was just 19, in search of greater opportunities elsewhere. And maybe to get away from trouble. There's rumours here in Shetland of a youthful prank one New Year's Eve when Stout and some pals set off one of these cannons in the historic Fort Charlotte, having first primed it with gunpowder and stuffed it with rubbish, including a dead cat. But the resulting detonation on the stroke of midnight caused considerable damage. Perhaps it was time for Stout to get out of town. But New Zealand seems a long way to go just to avoid police attention.
Another account suggests that he chose to come to New Zealand because it was in the news due to the wars in the North Island and gold rushes in the south. He had taken a course in surveying prior to his departure and headed for Otago, arriving on the Lady Milton in 1864 and staying with a family friend from Shetland. There were no openings as a surveyor in Dunedin, however, so he fell back on his former profession and took a job as a teacher. He taught at Shaw's Private Grammar School, the Dunedin North School, and then the Boys' High School, until 1867 when he began training as a lawyer. Law was to be Stout's major field of endeavour, interspersed with important roles in politics provincially and then nationally, including 2 stints as Premier and then a long period as Chief Justice. Throughout his long career, Shetland contacts were important to him. When he began his own law firm in Dunedin in 1871, for example, it was in partnership with Basil Seabright, likewise from Lerwick. As a politician, Stout strongly supported immigration schemes, including one not particularly successful one to settle fishermen from Shetland on Stewart Island and develop its fishing industry.
He personally encouraged and even supported financially large numbers of Shetlanders to come to New Zealand, including all 5 of his siblings. He was a member of Shetland societies in Dunedin and in Wellington, and he made 2 trips back to Lerwick in 1909 and 1921, during which he was feted as the local boy who'd made it big on an imperial scale.
Stout's lifelong devotion to Shetland was well known. He frequently boasted about his fellow islanders who had distinguished themselves in all sorts of walks of life around the world, and claimed to have met almost every Shetlander who had settled in New Zealand. He attributed a special benefit to the long winter nights when Shetlanders were forced to spend their time indoors for making them what he considered a notably well-read and thoughtful group of people.
At At the same time, he was proud of his Norse ancestry, being a direct descendant of the Norwegian Vikings who had invaded the island 1,000 years before. Some people said he looked like a Viking too, a big man, over 6 feet tall, who wore his beard long.
When he died, he bequeathed his extensive library on Norway, Orkney and Shetland and Scandinavian law to the Shetland Society of Wellington. He also gave £100 to the Lyric Central School to fund an annual prize for the best performed student. A portrait of Stout was hung there to inspire pupils to follow in his esteemed footsteps.
There are many other facets in the life of Robert Stout that a full biographical account would need to enlarge on. His status as Dunedin's leading free thought advocate, his role in the promotion of prohibition, his claim that he was the very first student at the University of Otago, where he was certainly the first lecturer to teach law and later was a member of the University Council. Likewise, his long and happy marriage to Anna Logan, the young woman born in a fern tree cottage here in Royal Terrace and who was his intellectual partner and with Robert's support, one of the leaders of the women's suffrage movement in New Zealand. But there were few people who matched Robert Stout's contribution to New Zealand life at the highest levels of law, politics and education, an eminence in public life that was recognised with the award of a knighthood in 1886. Stout's period of national preeminence followed his move to Wellington, where he died in 1930, survived by his wife and their 6 children. But he also left a more permanent mark on the Dunedin landscape here at Maya on the western side of Otago Harbour. Stout owned a lot of the land on which this suburb developed, and it was he who gave it its name. Now, it's neither a Maori name, as you might assume, nor a Shetland one, but rather it comes from Greek mythology, and it's one of the stars in the Pleiades cluster, the 7 Sisters, or the Maori Matariki. It was Stout's pet name for his older daughter Margaret. And there are other names in this suburb that also reflect the Stout connection, including an unformed street called Norna Road after the goddess of time in Norse mythology.